A young nurse saved a little girl from pit bull attack at the pack, unaware her dad owned half the state. He changed her life instantly. It was exactly 4 p.m. that Thursday evening in New York when Emily stepped out of St. Grace Memorial Hospital, unaware of what was lurking and waiting for her, an event that will change her life forever. Her shoulders were heavy with exhaustion and her spirit worn thin from a grueling 12-hour shift. Emily had been a nurse for nearly 6 years. But this walk through the park was her moment of peace, a sacred ritual that allowed her to exhale the day, no matter how chaotic it had been. She had walked the same route home since she first moved into her little brownstone apartment in Brooklyn Heights. The park, with its leafy oaks and winding cobblestone paths, was more than a shortcut. It was her sanctuary. The sun had just begun its descent, casting a golden glow over the tree-lined park. She passed the familiar sights. The old man who fed pigeons by the bench near the fountain, the jogger who always wore neon green, and the little girl with pigtails who played with her purple ball every other evening on the grass. It was a scene she could have painted with her eyes closed. Nothing ever changed here, and that was why she loved it. Until today. Out of the corner of her eye, something snapped, a movement too fast, too violent to be normal in this place of peace. Emily turned just in time to hear a panicked scream. It wasn't a playful shout or a child whining. It was raw fear. Then she saw it. A pit bull, muscular and wild-eyed, was charging across the open field. Its leash trailed uselessly behind it like a broken promise. People were already reacting, mothers grabbing their children, a teenager fumbling with his phone, someone shouting for help, but the dog had already locked its focus. The little girl with the purple ball was standing in the center of the grass, frozen in fear. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Her small frame was paralyzed, wide eyes locked on the barreling beast that was no more than 20 yards away and closing fast. Emily didn't think. She didn't calculate distance or danger. Her nursing instincts kicked in, not the ones that came from books or training, but the ones buried deep in her bones. She sprinted. Move. Someone shouted behind her, but she couldn't hear them. Her heart thudded in her ears as her feet pounded the earth. The wind howled past her face as she crossed the grass in long, desperate strides. 10 yards. 5. The dog snarled, its teeth bared, its growl rattling the air like thunder. Emily reached the girl and swept her into her arms, twisting her body in one fluid motion to place herself between the child and the oncoming force. And then, pain. It was white-hot and immediate. The dog latched onto her lower leg, its jaws sinking deep. Emily screamed, but didn't let go of the child. She fell to her knees, still shielding the girl, her back arched in agony. Blood began to soak through her pants, trickling down into the grass. Someone tackled the dog. A man, maybe two, struggled to pull it off. One hit it with a bag, another yanked hard on the leash. After what felt like an eternity, the grip loosened and the dog was pulled back, barking wildly, foam at its mouth. Emily collapsed forward onto the grass, her arms still wrapped around the trembling little girl, who was now crying into her chest. "It's okay," Emily whispered through clenched teeth. "You're okay. You're safe." Her leg throbbed violently, and the warmth of her own blood soaked into the earth beneath her. Still, she didn't move. She didn't release the child until another pair of arms gently pried the girl away. "Are you hurt?" a panicked voice asked. It was a man's voice. Deep. Worried. Close. Emily blinked up into the face of a sharply dressed man. Expensive suit, expensive watch, but eyes filled with absolute terror. "My daughter," he choked, pulling the girl to his chest. "Oh my God." Emily tried to smile, but winced instead. "She's okay," she whispered. By then, a crowd had gathered. Phones were out, cameras recording. Someone had already called 911, and sirens could be heard in the distance. But all Emily could think about was staying conscious. The man dropped to his knees beside her. "Don't move," he said urgently, placing his jacket under her head like a pillow. "Help is coming. Please, just hold on." I'm okay," Emily murmured, trying to sound brave. The truth was, the pain was searing, and her vision had started to blur. "Don't try to talk. You saved her. You saved my little girl." The man's voice cracked. "I don't even know your name." "Emily," she whispered. "Emily," he repeated it like a prayer. The paramedics arrived minutes later. In a flurry of motion, Emily was placed on a stretcher, an oxygen mask fitted to her face, and her wound temporarily bandaged. The man insisted on riding in the ambulance with her. Emily, drifting in and out of consciousness, could still hear his voice, calm, soothing, somehow familiar. He held her hand all the way to the hospital. Inside the ER, chaos erupted again, but this time, it was controlled chaos, the kind Emily was used to. Nurses cut away her blood-soaked pants. The attending physician ordered X-rays and pain meds. She was conscious enough to identify herself as one of their own. A nurse. Part of the family. They worked quickly, efficiently. Through it all, the man stayed by her side. It wasn't until she was stabilized and resting in a private recovery room that he finally introduced himself. "My name is Charles Donovan," he said quietly. "You probably don't recognize me. I prefer it that way." Emily blinked up at him from the hospital bed. He had changed into something more casual, but his presence still carried an air of importance. "I just wanted to thank you. My daughter, Lily, she means everything to me. If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't done what you did," he paused, his jaw tightening. "I don't know how to repay something like that." Emily offered a weak smile. "You don't have to repay me. I did what anyone would have done." "No," he said, shaking his head. "That's where you're wrong. Not everyone would have run toward danger. You didn't hesitate. You put yourself between my child and death." There was a long silence. Then, Charles reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. He signed it quickly, tore it out, and gently placed it in her hand. Emily looked down and blinked hard. $20 million. Her breath caught in her throat. "I know money can't equal what you did," he said, his voice softer now. "But please, let this be my token of appreciation. Use it however you want. Live, heal, thrive. Whatever this world denied you before, don't let it anymore." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Not from the pain, not from shock, but from the overwhelming flood of emotion that no one could prepare for. She didn't know then, but cameras had caught the entire incident in the park. News outlets had already begun picking up the story. Social media was ablaze. By the time the sun had fully set over New York, Emily was no longer just a tired nurse walking home. She was a hero. A woman whose one act of bravery, made in a heartbeat, would ripple far beyond a single Thursday evening. And though her leg bore the scars of that moment, her life had been forever changed, not by the money, not by the fame, but by the truth that even in a world full of fear, someone still chose to run toward it, for someone else. It was the morning after the life-changing event in the park when Emily awoke in her hospital bed, the sterile white sheets contrasting sharply with the vivid chaos that was already erupting beyond the hospital walls. Her leg throbbed with a dull ache, swollen and wrapped tightly in crisp white gauze. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the whirlwind that had taken hold of her world overnight. A storm made not of weather but of headlines, flashing cameras, and a public eager to crown a hero. News of Emily's brave act had spread with astonishing speed. What began as a shaky phone video taken by a passerby had ignited an unstoppable viral blaze across social media platforms. Thousands, then millions, watched the footage again and again. A young nurse, fearless and fast, throwing herself in front of a charging pit bull to shield a small girl. The dog's teeth sinking into her leg, the desperate cries in the background, the crowd rushing in to restrain the animal, all captured in raw, unfiltered detail. By dawn, the story had moved from social media shares to breaking news bulletins. Local news anchors narrated the tale with a mix of awe and gratitude. By midday, national networks clamored to cover the sensation, broadcasting her courage to every corner of the country. Outside the hospital, reporters and camera crews gathered like a swarm, their lenses trained on the building where Emily was recovering. Inside, the surreal nature of the moment crashed over her in waves. Nurses whispered in the corridors, and unfamiliar faces stopped by her room. Hospital administrators, well-wishers, and even doctors who wanted to shake the hand of the woman whose actions had captured the heart of the nation. Emily, still groggy from pain and medication, struggled to grasp the magnitude of it all. The first time she turned on the television, the image of herself froze on the screen. There she was, bruised but unbowed, lying on the grass with a look of fierce determination etched into her face. The replayed footage captured every second of her dive between the dog and the child, every heartbeat of that terrifying moment. The voiceover called her the brave nurse, and hashtags like #HeroNurse and #EmilyTheBrave began trending relentlessly online. The outpouring of support was overwhelming. Her phone buzzed nonstop with messages, texts, calls, emails from strangers, news outlets, and friends alike. People sent prayers and praise, calling her an inspiration, a real-life guardian angel. But amid the flood of attention, Emily felt adrift. She didn't see herself as a hero. To her, she had merely done what anyone with even the smallest measure of humanity would have done. It was instinct, training, and an unshakable sense of duty all rolled into one. Yet, the world had chosen to see her differently. Overnight, she had transformed from a quiet nurse, dedicated to long shifts in the hospital's shadows, into a public figure celebrated on screens and in conversations everywhere. Interview requests came pouring in. Journalists lined the hallway outside her room, eager for her story, her thoughts, her emotions. Cameras waited for her to smile, to cry, to say something that would capture hearts anew. But Emily, overwhelmed by the relentless spotlight, politely declined every single request. She wanted nothing more than to heal and return to the simplicity of her life before this extraordinary moment. But fame was a relentless tide. As the world fell in love with the image of Emily's bravery, the story gained another layer, one that deepened public fascination. News outlets soon revealed the identity of the man who had accompanied her at the hospital, Charles Donovan, a billionaire real estate magnate known for his vast wealth and low profile. Headlines screamed with intrigue: billionaire's daughter saved by courageous nurse, $20 million thank you, a father's gift to his daughter's savior. The narrative morphed from a simple tale of heroism to a story of gratitude measured in millions. Emily's life shifted again under this glare. The generous gift from Donovan had been unexpected, a gesture that made headlines itself. The public was captivated not just by her bravery, but by the staggering sum she had been given. Commentators debated the meaning of such generosity, opinion columns wrestled with questions about the value of a human life, and social media buzzed with admiration and debate. Everywhere Emily went, people recognized her. Strangers stopped her on the street, calling out words of thanks and admiration. Children, inspired by the headlines, made cards and drawings, telling her she was their hero. The hospital formally honored her with commendations, and city officials announced plans to celebrate her courage. The world had turned her into a symbol, a beacon of hope and selflessness. Yet, amidst the acclaim and fanfare, Emily remained remarkably grounded. She insisted in every statement she made that she was no different from anyone else. "I just did what any decent human being would do," she said quietly in her few public appearances, her voice steady but humble. "That little girl needed help. I didn't think. I just ran." But the spotlight was unyielding. Her image, once private and unremarkable, was now everywhere, on magazine covers, in social media profiles, featured in news segments. Paparazzi camped outside her home. Reporters probed her family and friends, and documentary filmmakers sought permission to tell her story. For Emily, who had spent years caring for others quietly and without recognition, the intense scrutiny was as exhausting as the wounds on her leg. She found herself longing for privacy, for the anonymity that once allowed her to move through her life unnoticed. The media storm had made her a public figure, but it had also made her a target of relentless attention. Still, through it all, she never lost sight of what mattered most: the life she had saved and the quiet courage that had led her to act. Despite the accolades and the fame, Emily knew she had simply answered a call of humanity. And while the world saw her as a hero, she remained, at her core, a nurse who had done what needed to be done. As the days turned into weeks, Emily began to accept that her life had irrevocably changed. She learned to navigate the new reality of her public image, balancing the expectations of the world with her own desire for normalcy. The media storm had shown her the power of a single act of bravery and the ripple effect it could create. In the midst of all the noise, Emily found moments of quiet reflection. She realized that while the world now saw her as the brave nurse, she was still the same person who walked through that park every day, the same woman who cared deeply for others, and the same soul who had run without hesitation when it mattered most. The media storm had passed, but its impact lingered. On her life, on her spirit, and on the countless lives touched by her courage. And in that, Emily found a new kind of strength, the strength to face whatever came next, grounded in the knowledge that sometimes, the simplest acts of kindness could change everything. It was a crisp autumn morning when Emily stood before a crowd gathered in the bright, airy auditorium of her hometown's community center. The sunlight filtered gently through the tall windows, casting a warm glow on the expectant faces before her, nurses, first responders, students, and local officials. This was the day Emily had long dreamed of but never imagined would come so soon. The official launch of the Emily Carter Foundation, a cause born from courage, compassion, and an unwavering desire to give back. Only months earlier, Emily's life had been transformed in ways she never could have foreseen. The viral video of her rushing to save a little girl from a vicious pit bull attack had turned a quiet nurse into a household name. The generous $20 million gift from Charles Donovan, the billionaire father of the little girl she saved, had given her a platform and the resources to make a lasting difference. But Emily knew that money was only a tool. It was what she chose to do with it that mattered. Her foundation was dedicated to supporting nurses and first responders, the often unsung heroes who risk their lives daily to protect and heal others. With a mission focused on providing scholarships, mental health support, and essential resources, Emily's foundation aimed to uplift those who gave so much to their communities but received little in return. Standing at the podium, Emily's voice was steady but heartfelt. "This foundation is about more than money," she said, her eyes sweeping across the crowd. "It's about recognizing the courage it takes to face fear every day. It's about kindness, compassion, and the belief that one person's action can ripple out to change countless lives. I am humbled to stand here today, but more importantly, I am inspired by every nurse, every first responder who steps forward when others step back." The crowd responded with applause, the energy in the room a tangible mix of hope and gratitude. For Emily, moments like these were a far cry from the hospital shifts she had grown accustomed to, long hours spent treating patients, often unnoticed and uncelebrated. Yet, despite her newfound wealth and recognition, she remained grounded in the very values that had defined her life before the headlines: humility, empathy, and dedication. Emily's days were now a blend of new responsibilities and familiar routines. While the foundation required much of her time, meeting with board members, planning programs, and attending events, she insisted on continuing her nursing work part-time. The hospital was more than a workplace. It was a community, a place where she had honed her skills and learned what it truly meant to care. Her colleagues admired her for this. Despite the public adulation and financial windfall, Emily never let it change how she interacted with others. She was the same person who greeted fellow nurses with warmth, who stayed late to comfort a frightened patient, who rolled up her sleeves without hesitation. This authenticity only deepened the respect she commanded. Beyond the hospital walls, Emily embraced her new role as an advocate and mentor. She traveled to schools and community centers, speaking to young people about courage and kindness. Her story, the moment she leapt into danger without hesitation, became a beacon of inspiration. She emphasized that heroism was not reserved for the extraordinary but was found in the everyday choices to act with bravery and heart. In one memorable visit to a local high school, Emily addressed a packed auditorium of students. "Courage isn't about never feeling fear," she told them. "It's about choosing to do what's right, even when you are afraid. Kindness is not weakness, it's strength. And sometimes, all it takes is one small act to make a world of difference." The students listened intently, many moved to tears or eager to ask questions, their faces alight with the possibility that they, too, could be heroes in their own lives. Charles Donovan and his daughter remained close to Emily, their bond forged in the crucible of that fateful day in the park. They were frequent guests at foundation events, their presence a symbol of friendship and shared purpose. Charles, who had once been a distant figure in the headlines, revealed a deeply compassionate side as he worked alongside Emily to expand the foundation's reach. Together, they launched initiatives to provide mental health counseling for first responders struggling with trauma, created scholarship programs for nursing students from underprivileged backgrounds, and funded the purchase of vital equipment for hospitals in need. The foundation's impact grew quickly, touching lives across the state and inspiring other philanthropists to join the cause. Despite the whirlwind of activity, Emily took care to maintain balance in her life. She returned often to the park where it all began, finding solace in its quiet paths and familiar trees. It was here, in moments of reflection, that she grounded herself, reminding herself of the simple humanity that had guided her through everything. Emily's humility shone brightest when she spoke candidly about her journey. In interviews and speeches, she rejected the label of hero, instead focusing on the shared humanity that connected her with the people she helped and who helped her in return. "I'm just a nurse who did what anyone would do," she often said. "But if my story can encourage even one person to act with kindness or courage, then it's worth everything." Her story resonated far beyond her hometown. Across social media, people shared her message of hope and resilience. Nurses and first responders reached out to thank her for giving voice to their struggles. Young people found in her an example of how ordinary lives could be transformed through extraordinary compassion. Over time, the Emily Carter Foundation became more than an organization, it became a movement. Its programs expanded nationally, inspiring similar efforts across the country. Emily's leadership remained steady and humble, always centered on the people behind the scenes who faced danger and hardship daily. Through it all, Emily never forgot where she came from. The girl who once walked home tired after a long hospital shift was now a symbol of hope and a catalyst for change. Her life, forever altered by a single moment of bravery, had come full circle. In the quiet moments between speeches, events, and hospital rounds, Emily found peace in knowing she had created something enduring. The foundation was her legacy, a testament to the power of courage and kindness in the face of fear. And as she looked ahead to the future, she felt ready to face whatever challenges came next, armed not with fame or fortune, but with a heart dedicated to serving others. Her new beginning was not just a chapter in her own story, but an open invitation to everyone. To act with courage, to lead with kindness, and to believe that each of us holds the power to change the world, one selfless act at a time. It was a gentle spring afternoon, exactly 1 year since that day that had altered Emily's life forever. The park, alive with the cheerful sounds of children laughing and playing, was bathed in a warm golden light that spilled through the trees, dappling the soft grass beneath. Families picnicked on blankets, friends tossed frisbees, and the air was filled with a sense of calm happiness that only a sunny day could bring. For most, it was just another peaceful afternoon. But for Emily, this place held a special, almost sacred significance. She sat quietly on a worn wooden bench near the edge of the playground, watching the world around her with a calm heart and thoughtful eyes. The noise and energy of the children, their freedom and joy, stirred something deep inside her. This was the same grass where a year ago, a sudden burst of chaos had shattered the stillness. The memory of that day, both terrifying and miraculous, came rushing back with vivid clarity. The pit bull that had charged toward a small, defenseless girl. The instinctive, unhesitating decision to throw herself between the dog and the child, shielding the girl with her own body. The sharp pain as the dog's teeth sank into her leg. The terror and relief that followed. Now, the little girl was there, too, running free and laughing, unburdened by fear. Emily's gaze softened as she watched the girl dart through the sunlit grass, her carefree spirit a living testament to survival and healing. The transformation of that child, from trembling vulnerability to joyous childhood, felt like a quiet victory that belonged to everyone who had cared, comforted, and loved her. As Emily sat there, lost in thought, a familiar figure approached carrying 2 cups of steaming coffee. It was Charles Donovan, the man whose generous gift had not only changed her life but had given her the means to create a lasting legacy. He smiled warmly and settled beside her, offering one of the cups. The two sat in companionable silence, sipping their coffee and absorbing the peaceful surroundings. "It feels different here now," Charles said thoughtfully, his eyes following the children playing nearby. "Almost like this place is healed with time, just like all of us." Emily nodded. "A year ago, this park was where everything changed. I used to walk through here without thinking much. Now every step, every sound, reminds me of what happened and what could have been." They both looked toward the little girl again, who was now running toward a cluster of other children. Her laughter rang out clear and bright, a melody that seemed to cleanse the lingering shadows of that terrible day. "It's incredible how one moment can ripple through so many lives," Charles said quietly. "Your courage that day saved her, yes, but it also set off something much bigger, a chain of hope, kindness, and community." Emily smiled, a mix of humility and gratitude filling her. "I never imagined that my simple act of doing what felt right would lead to all this." The foundation, the support for nurses and first responders. It's humbling to see how people have rallied. Charles reached out and gently touched her arm. "You gave people a reason to believe again. In a world so often filled with fear and division, your story reminded everyone that bravery and compassion still exist. That's a gift no money can buy." Emily looked down at her leg, the faint scar visible beneath the hem of her pants. It was a quiet but constant reminder of the pain she had endured and the life she had saved. The scar had become a symbol not just of suffering, but of strength and survival. a mark of a moment when fear was overcome by selfless love. For a long moment, neither spoke. Around them, life continued its joyful rhythms. Children played tag, parents chatted on benches, and the breeze whispered through the trees, carrying with it the fresh scent of spring blossoms. Finally, Emily broke the silence. Sometimes, I still can't believe how much has changed in just a year. I went from an ordinary nurse, going through my daily routines, to someone whose story touched thousands, maybe millions. It's overwhelming but also, somehow right. Charles smiled. You didn't ask for this. You just acted with your heart. And the world needed that. We all do. Their conversation drifted to the foundation Emily had started with Charles's support. A beacon of hope for nurses and first responders who often went unnoticed. She shared stories of the scholarships awarded, the counseling programs launched, and the growing network of people inspired to join their cause. Despite her success and the fortune she now had, Emily remained committed to working part-time at the hospital, holding on to the very core of who she was. You've stayed humble through all of this, Charles said admiringly. That's rare. It's why people trust you, why they believe in your vision. Emily shrugged, a soft laugh escaping her lips. I just remember where I came from. The hospital halls, the late-night shifts, the quiet moments when all you have is a patient's hand to hold. That's what grounds me. As the afternoon deepened into early evening, Emily found herself reflecting on the ripple effect of that one act. How a single moment of courage had expanded far beyond the initial rescue, creating waves of kindness and support that spread through the community and beyond. It was a reminder that even the smallest act, when done with love, could transform lives. She thought of the people she had met along the way, the nurses who confided in her, the first responders who thanked her for recognizing their sacrifices, the children whose futures had been brightened by the foundation's work. Every story was a thread in the tapestry woven from that moment of bravery. Emily glanced once more at the little girl playing nearby. A year ago, that child had been frozen in fear, helpless and alone. Today, she was free, laughing, thriving. That transformation was the true heart of Emily's journey, a testament to resilience and hope. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Emily felt a deep sense of peace. The scar on her leg tingled faintly. A reminder of the past, but no longer a burden. Instead, it was a symbol of how far she had come. Charles stood and offered his hand. Shall we take a walk? There's so much more to do, and the future looks bright. Emily took his hand with a smile. Yes, one step at a time. Together, they walked slowly through the park, their footsteps blending with the sounds of life around them. The story that had started with fear and pain had blossomed into something beautiful. A full circle of courage, kindness, and new beginnings. Sometimes, Emily thought, the universe has a way of taking the smallest acts of bravery and turning them into the greatest turning points. She had never planned to be a hero. But that day, standing in the grass with a little girl's life in her hands, she had become one. And in doing so, she changed not only a life but the world around her. Her journey was far from over. But as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear, Emily felt ready to face whatever came next, with hope, strength, and a heart forever open to kindness. If you enjoyed this powerful story of courage, kindness, and full-circle transformation, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about how it all ended? How did Emily's journey impact you? What do you think about Charles and the little girl whose life was forever changed? Drop your thoughts in the comments and rate this story on a scale of 1 to 10. Be honest, we read every comment. Also, let us know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach around the world. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for being part of this journey.